Okay, hello stream, or hello YouTube. So, we are back here in Second Life at the Buddha Center, and I am just waiting to see if everything looks fine on the stream. Okay, it seems that I am live. So far, so good. Okay, so here we are at the Buddha Center, and we are going to listen to a Dhamma talk given by the Venerable Yuttadhammo Bhikkhus. And I made sure to put the link in the description so you can go and check out the talk. So it's a talk I haven't listened to myself before, and that's why I thought I might just catch up on it with you guys here at the Buddha Center under the Bodhi tree. And yeah, the talk is with the title of the Discourse on the Jungle of the Mind, from the Majjhima Nikaya, called in Pali Cetokhila Sutta. So yeah, please get into a comfortable position and get ready for a nice Dhamma talk on the jungle of the mind. And we should get into position with the camera. Go down here. Like that. And I think we're ready. So let me just turn down these sounds a little bit. And we should be able to start the Dhamma talk over here. And yeah, I hope you would join me in meditation as we listen to this Dhamma talk and venture through the jungle. Okay, here we go. Okay, good evening everyone. Welcome to our evening Dhamma session, our weekly Sutta session, I should say. So today we're looking at the Cetokhila Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 16, for those of you interested. Cetokhila means wilderness of the mind, or wilderness in the mind, jungle of the mind, maybe better. Khila is something that's hard to pass through. If you've ever been through the jungle, if you've never been through the jungle, let me tell you, at its worst, the jungle is not an easy thing to pass through. Remember once when I got lost in the jungle and this poacher, actually, some poacher up in the mountain who was firing his gun off, I heard the gun go off and I ran towards him until I remembered that that's probably a bad idea. Run towards someone with a gun, especially when you're wearing robes that make you look, well, not exactly like a human being. I think I scared him more than he scared me though when I finally caught up to him. Anyway, he pointed out the way back to the village, and it was down through this ravine in the middle. It was midnight. Oh, I'm sorry. I just had to stop the talk for a second. I wanted to change my sitting position. And so now we're sitting in the listening position. And maybe we should just put it on midnight. Okay. Back to the talk. I'm sorry. Here we go. And so I'm walking blind through this ravine, and boy, by the time I got back to the village, I was completely scratched and had thorns, these little thorns that get under your skin and take months. I was finding them a few weeks later anyway. I was finding thorns in my feet and legs and hands and arms weeks later. That's what the jungle is. So when you apply this to the mind, you're talking about something that keeps you from progressing, keeps you lost, keeps you caught, keeps you entangled, heading about in the wrong direction, unable to find your way out. Yeah, jungle here is not just something that obstructs your path, but something that gets you all turned around. You know, going out, the thing about getting lost is going away from your point of origin is easy. It's the turning around. When you turn around, suddenly everything looks quite different. Right? You remember everything on your way out. Yes, I remember this hill and this hill. And I did, but on the way back it all looked different. The jungle gets you lost. But this sutta is about two different sets of things. It's the Cetokhila, and the other one is Cetaso Vinibandha, which is just the shackles of the mind, things that keep you bound. So this sutta is about, well, it's actually, there's three sets. He doesn't mention this in the beginning. In the beginning he sets out to talk about these two sets of things. He says if someone doesn't abandon the 5 wildernesses of the mind and break free from the 5 shackles of the mind, they cannot be expected that they should grow in this Dhamma Vinaya, that they should progress. Netang thanang vijjati. That sort of thing is not possible. But then at the end of the sutta he talks about 5 more things that are actually positive. He says when one abandons these 10, well, 5 things, 5 positive qualities come about, and that's how one succeeds. So altogether there are 15 things. And so we'll go through those tonight. It's a useful endeavor, I think. The thing about you probably getting a sort of seeing a pattern here, that a lot of these suttas can be boiled down to lists of things that are good, lists of things that are bad. And a question that often comes up is, okay, now I know these things, how do I get rid of them? Because what's conspicuously absent from most of these talks is any means or any detailed means by which one removes these bad things and cultivates the good things, right? And I think that's an important point to consider, because if it was possible to just turn off the bad things and turn on the good things, or find some mechanism by which we could change, well, it would undermine a lot of the Buddha's teaching about non-self, where the Buddha says, Nachalabhati sankare, evang me sankara hotu. Nachalabhati sankaresu. You can't get it in regards to sankharas. Evang me sankara hotu, evang me sankara ma ahesu. May my mental formations be thus, may my mental formations not be thus. You can't have it that way. You can't just wish things to be. And so the Buddha does talk a lot about training. But the training is often in very simple things like mindfulness. It's not training directly to remove this or to remove that or to cultivate this or to cultivate that. What this is designed for, going through these sets of Dhammas, is to point out, in this case, the dangers, and also at the end point out the good things. When you're being mindful, it's very easy to miss the most important qualities or Dhammas. The ones that you really should be mindful are often the ones that you're the least mindful of, and that's what makes them important. They're the strongest ones you cling to. If you're clinging to something and it's become habitual, it's very hard to become mindful of that. And so pointing it out to the meditators is crucial in terms of directing their attention. If I point out to you, this Dhamma, that Dhamma, this is bad, that's bad, immediately you start to see that in yourself and you say, oh, I've got that. Yeah, I've seen that. And then you sit down to meditate and you say, oh, this is what he was talking about. You see, so the real purpose here is not to provide any, and it doesn't, it's not to provide any means by which to turn these things on or off. It's to point out to you, some of the things that are easily missed and missed with greater consequences, right? If you're not mindful of certain things, it's less dire than if you're not mindful of certain other things often mentioned in suttas like this. Right? If you're not mindful of the really bad things, if you're not clear and not able to see through them and see the dangers in them, very difficult to progress, very difficult to find peace of mind. We talk simply about being able to sit peacefully, being able to be at peace with ourselves. Our minds are agitated, disturbed by wanting and liking and disliking and so on, and sorts of things brought up in this sutta, or in suttas like this. So a big part of it is to simply give us direction. It's like to provide us a sense that we're headed in the right direction, and to point out to us the right path and the wrong path, and to help us direct our efforts. So let's go through what these are. The wilderness of the mind is mainly made up of doubt. So people have doubt in the Buddha, he says. Doubt in the teacher, Sattha. The Sattha means the great headmaster, who is the Buddha. The Buddha described himself, referred to himself often as Sattha, the teacher. Satthari kankati vichikicchati nadhimucchati na sampasidati. You don't have faith in the Buddha, it's hard to put out effort, right? If you think about the Buddha and it's kind of turns you off, or if your idea of the Buddha is some fat guy who laughs a lot, it can be hard to really take Buddhism seriously. It's a real danger that we have these days. People, when they hear about the Buddha, they think jolly fat guy. And that's not actually the Buddha. I think much more common, or that's common, but another important point about the Buddha is just not knowing anything about him. A lot of people practice meditation not knowing much about the Buddha. And obviously you don't need to know anything about the Buddha to practice mindfulness, but it sure helps if you really learn the Buddha's teaching and get a sense of just how wonderful he was. Never said anything that was mean or disparaging to anyone. He was full of compassion and wisdom. It's a support for your practice. It's why people are so keen to make these Buddha images of the Buddha, even though the Buddha wasn't having any of it, and the monks for a long time weren't having any of it either, not making images. But it became, people had such strong faith in the Buddha, and they started making these images, and it's understandable because People had great faith, and still do to this day, great faith in the Buddha. It's not like faith in the sense that you believe something without any evidence. It's that you see and you learn about someone, and they strike you as so great and wonderful. So the Buddha says, this kind of thing is important in a sense. I mean, really what he's saying is if you doubt him, it's a part of the problem. But certainly having confidence in the Buddha is a great support. And of course it comes best by meeting the Buddha. This was of course taught in a time when you could actually go and see the Buddha. So if someone went and saw the Buddha and said, he's bald, right? He's living in the forest, he's torturing himself. And if you have doubt like that, very difficult. You'll never get anywhere in the Buddha's teaching. Most people, when they hear about Buddhism, talking about the Buddha is, the biggest thing is, if you think of the Buddha as a jolly fat guy, it's very hard to get confidence in that. Maybe not. I mean, people like that about this fat guy, is that he's jolly and full. Obviously eats and gets enough food. And he seems very compassionate and very kind and very happy. And so people think, Buddhism is about happiness. It's not entirely bad, but it's nothing like actually learning about the real Buddha and gaining some kind of confidence. And wow, he was a true meditation master. Really had it all down, to say the least, to put it kind of lightly. The second is the Dhamma. So of course this is maybe more to the point. If you doubt the Buddha's teaching, if you doubt the meditation practice, a lot of people doubt mindfulness practice, especially of the sort where you use a mantra, and I'm not exactly sure why that is. It's perhaps because there are a lot of other people who tell you not to use it, but I think it's just not how we think of meditation, When you hear about meditation, when you look at a picture of someone meditating, you see them just sitting there and you think, oh, okay. And we get this sense of meditation as being something passive, where you just sit there and do nothing. Not realizing that closing your eyes isn't to turn off your mind, it's to turn on your mind and train your mind, Meditation is hard work, and it should be, no matter what kind of meditation you practice. And people get great doubt about this type of meditation where you repeat to yourself, for example, pain, pain. It's a shame, because it's a very useful technique. It's quite practical and clearly realizable benefits. But doubt will prevent them from arising, or will slow them down. Fortunately, even if you do doubt the Dhamma, but you still practice it anyway, eventually you can slowly wean yourself off the doubt. With the Buddha's teaching, it's easier because it happens to be realizable. It's the kind of thing that you can, it's opanayika, or it's sandittika, you can see it for yourself. If you have a teaching that says, believe in God and you'll go to heaven, well, it's a little harder to get some faith and reassurance, right? Theists have the worst. They've got the worst fate, worst luck, because they have to believe something that has no evidence, or not very good evidence. But if you want to believe that anger is bad for you, well, it's much easier to get evidence in that. You don't have to believe it, just study the anger for a bit. You'll say, oh yeah, anger is not pleasant, for example. The third is doubt about the Sangha. So this goes together. I mean, this is a fairly sort of obvious, it's an obvious progression, talking about the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And the Buddha puts these together, of course, as the triple gem. Doubt in the Sangha here refers specifically to having doubt that anyone can, when practicing the Buddha's teaching, become enlightened. You look at the followers of the Buddha and you say, I don't think these guys are enlightened at all. I don't see anything special about Sariputta or Moggallana, or these monks walking around like zombies. not laughing and singing and playing music and eating good food. What kind of happiness is that? The worst doubt, I think, is the doubt that the Buddha's teaching has efficacy, that it's actually possible to become enlightened, that anyone has become enlightened. I mean, this one, I think it's less of an issue. It certainly can be an issue. And it can be, it's a bigger issue now, I suppose. Nowadays, when we don't have the Buddha as an example, instead we have a lot of different Buddhist teachers, some of whom may be partially enlightened, some may even be fully enlightened, some may not be enlightened at all. And having to sort of sift through, separate the wheat from the chaff, and doubting what's the wheat and what's the chaff, and hearing people even say, I'm an arahant, and that kind of thing, you know. Yikes, what do you do with that when someone says they're an arahant? Easy to doubt. But this isn't so much about doubting a specific person as it is about doubting the concept of the Sangha. That someone who practices according to the Buddha's teaching is practicing rightly, and someone who practices according to the Buddha's teaching becomes enlightened, becomes pure in the mind. Basically that it has results. The fourth is the training. Again, basically talking about the same thing. I mean, maybe this is, I should have saved for this part. So doubt in the training. Doubt about the people training, you'd have doubt about the training itself. So the Dhamma, I guess, if you want to separate these out, the Dhamma, when we talked about the Dhamma, it means the concepts, the theory, X is Y, right? All sankharas are impermanent, all sankharas are suffering, all Dhammas are non-self, these kind of things. That's the Dhamma. The training is the four satipatthana, the practice in them. Is mindfulness a good thing? Is practice of mindfulness a good thing? If you have doubt in that, that's doubt about the training. So 4 types of doubt. These are wildernesses. These get you totally lost. Doubt. Doubt is... My teacher talked a lot about doubt. Not talked a lot about it, but he would often warn people about doubt. Whenever a meditator had doubt, he'd say, oh, that's... He would take special care. If someone came to him and he asked about the hindrances and they said they had no doubt, he would say, oh, good. At least you have no doubt, because doubt is dangerous. Doubt means getting lost. Long tang, let dern tang klai. You take the long way. And the 5th one is getting angry. Sab brahmachari su kupido hoti anattamano ahattajito kila jato. Here we have this word kila again. So kila actually means hardness. No, barrenness of mind. Yeah, so jungle might have been not exactly correct, but it's used to mean wasteland. Hardness of the mind. So with this one, it's anger. When you get, but it's specifically directed towards one's fellows. I mean, this is a teaching that's much more commonly useful for monks. It does rear its head among lay communities as well, but it's just maybe to give a warning. It's easy in our online community, maybe sometimes people get angry at each other. But it certainly happens in monasteries. I don't know if I've told this story a few times about how when I became a monk and I went away for a year and I came back and I wasn't at this monastery for 2 weeks, and sitting in the kitchen in the morning and one of the monks suddenly gets up and starts pounding on one of the other monks. Gives him a bloody nose, and it's just one of those things you never thought you'd see in a Buddhist monastery. But it happens. It happens more often than you think because, well, first and most importantly is because people of all sorts come to monasteries. So, and even the ones with good intentions, not to mention the ones with bad intentions. You can have good intentions and still let your emotions overwhelm you. I don't know, I can't imagine ever doing that myself, but, people of all kinds. So yeah, this is a fifth, this is a hardness or a wasteland of the mind, I guess. It's something that gets you stuck, gets in the way of your practice. I mean, it destroys community, destroys the communal harmony. The Buddha said, Sukho sukhasa samaki samakanang tapo sukho. Happiness is sukho sukhasa dhamma sukha sanghasa samaki. Happiness is the sangha when it dwells in harmony. And happiness, the exertion of those in harmony is happiness. Meaning there's a great power that comes from working together, Even here in our small house, I mean, this isn't ideal conditions. It's actually quite challenging to do it. A meditation course in such an enclosed space. But you see how it works when you get together, when you see other people doing it, when you're inspired by a house full of meditators. It encourages you in your practice. And anger, tempers flaring, this destroys that. It splits monasteries into pieces. I've seen monasteries where there were 3 groups of monks, large monasteries, and they had assembled into 3 cliques, and they fought. They manipulated and they fought for power in the monastery. It's quite impressively awful. It's happened even in the Buddha's time. So a warning to us in our Buddhist communities. Anger is one thing. This thing we have on the wall here. Anger is one thing. Everyone gets angry. But when you get angry back, that's when it starts. That's when the fight begins. So we let each other get angry. If someone starts beating you up, you accept that, well, that's they have to deal with that. It's not any of my business. It's a very impressive stance to take. And I've never been beaten up before, so I don't know how I would fare, but it's a good example to follow. So those are the 5 wildernesses of the mind, or not wildernesses, I guess, wastelands, barrenness, this totally awful place. The next 5 are the 5 shackles of the mind. And it's a bit different to be shackled. To be stuck, to be lost, this is one thing. Doubt gets you lost. Living in a broken sangha, this gets you lost. You have no direction. Who do I follow? Who do I trust? Shakes up your practice. But the shackles, they just keep you from practicing. So this, maybe you can guess what this has to do with. Really all has to do with greed. So the first set had to do with delusion, like doubt is a kind of a delusion, moha. And dosa, which is anger. But this set has to do with lobha, greed. So what are the 5 things that keep us tied, keep us shackled? Here a bhikkhu is not free from lust, desire, affection, thirst, fever, and craving for sensual pleasures. Sensuality, kama. We've talked about this before. Kama is the sense of seeing, want to see good things, hear good things, smell, taste, feel, think, feel sensuality. Just general sensuality. One is tied to sensual pleasures. And it's not one specific thing, it's just the state of being pleased, right? And this is how we live our lives. We jump from one to the other. You can't eat food and be pleased by it constantly. So we go from food to music to flowers, to soft beds, couches, sex. We go back and forth. None of these things can keep you pleased for long, so we have to jump back and forth. Entertainment, right? Entertainment's a little bit different. We'll save that maybe for one of the other ones. But sensuality, the 5 senses, 5 physical senses. Yes, getting caught up with those, obviously. I mean, people often demand to know what's wrong with these things, and well, there is quite a bit wrong with them in the sense that they lead to addiction and eventual disappointment, but there's something more in that they just get you distracted, right? Or bound, really, not even just distracted, but totally inert. No good comes from your life in the sense of personal development as long as you're tied to sensuality. You don't become better as a person. You don't develop spiritually. You don't free yourself from all the bad stuff in your mind. And so you leave yourself open to suffering, even not yet getting into the suffering that comes from addiction itself. But being addicted to sensuality is a total loss of life, loss of the potential that we have as human beings. It's a great loss to be caught up, to be shackled. It's like being in prison, wasting your life away in prison. So sensuality, the second one, and because of that, because of being shackled, the mind doesn't incline to ardor, devotion, perseverance, and striving. That's the first shackle. The second is lust, desire, affection, thirst, fever, and craving for the body. It's one's own body. Yes, one's own body. This is perhaps the desire for the body to look good, the obsession with how beautiful or handsome our body looks, looking in the mirror all the time, worrying about makeup, and I think women have it harder in this one. Men aren't as, I think, and this is of course cultural, but I think generally, just talking to women, it's amazing, how brainwashed women often are into being caught up. And brainwashed, I mean, it's a harsh term, but how it's really, I mean, from a young age, women are taught that they have to look a certain way. Much more than men, I think, culturally speaking. Maybe different in certain societies, but I think the West has done, well, the West, let's see, modern society in general has done a good job in that sense. People, cultures with strong attachment to culture. This is one of the negative sides of a strong attachment to cultures. Our cultures have become quite perverted in this sense. Women have to look a certain way. I don't even know if that's true, to tell you the truth. When I think about it, the West is pretty awful. I think about it, Sri Lanka's a pretty good place. In Sri Lanka, I don't find people all that caught up in their looks. I don't know. I'm getting lost. Let's not talk in this way. Generally speaking, cultures and societies teach women and men that we have to look in a certain way. We can't be overweight or pimple-faced or short, tall. You have to wear certain clothes and so on. Craving for the body, very dangerous. You get caught up in that, you get attached to the body. Well, yeah, it's very difficult to free yourself as well. Number 3, for form and craving for form. And this is different from the body, Bhikkhu Bodhi says, because form is relating to outer forms. So attachment to other people's bodies is probably a good one. Instead of just seeing, this is attachment to things, right? Attached to other physical objects. You attach to your car, You're attached to your wife or your husband, your girlfriend, boyfriend, your child, your son, your daughter, your father, your mother. Attached to gold and jewels, attached to your iPhone, iPad, attached to your clothes, your wristwatch, your rings, your jewelry. The attachment to things, very dangerous. Worrying about them. Just finding pleasure in them, of course. I mean, with all these things, the pleasure is the big problem. When you get caught up in the pleasure, you're not going anywhere. I mean, a big thing about pleasure, again, avoiding this whole, the elephant in the room of addiction, but the big thing about pleasure is it makes you comfortable, right? When you're pleased, you don't have any sense that something's wrong. It sounds kind of awful, I suppose, but we kind of want to have a sense of something wrong. But the point is we want to have a sense of what actually is wrong. And pleasure blinds you to what is actually wrong. The potential for suffering, our inability to cope with suffering. How do you know whether you're able to cope with suffering if you're always pleased, right? So meditation is challenging in this way. When you practice meditation, it's difficult, it's unpleasant often. And that's somehow purposeful, because it's a test to see how we react, and it's to show us how we react. And you'll see so clearly how we react and how we cause ourselves suffering. It's not our experiences that hurt us, it's our reactions to them. So forms. The fourth one is a bit specific here. A bhikkhu, this could be a layperson as well, eats as much as he likes or she likes until their belly is full, and indulges in the pleasures of sleeping, lolling, and drowsing. Someone once asked me, how is it that monks who eat only one day can get so fat? You might be surprised how many fat monks there are. And the answer, of course, is that they're not eating only one meal a day. They're eating probably several meals a day, unfortunately. I think in the beginning it looks like the Buddha didn't have any rules about only eating in the morning. I think it was sort of a given, right? Because a lot of people in that time, religious people, would starve themselves. So there was no sense in the beginning that anyone who went forth under the Buddha would eat a lot, especially probably because when the Buddha was still unknown, the monks would go on alms round and not get very much to eat. Like if I went on alms round here in Canada, I might not get anything to eat. But they would get maybe a few beans, and so there was no sense of eating too much. But once the Buddha's name was spread and so many people became caught up in his greatness, oh, there was a lot of food around. And then the Buddha said, yeah, you're only allowed to eat in the morning. No eating outside of the morning hours. And even that, even just eating in the morning, it's still easy, it's still possible to get caught up in eating and get caught up in eating a lot and then falling asleep. Another woman once said to me, the reason why a lot of monks are unhealthy is because after they eat, they immediately go and sit in meditation. And because they sit in meditation, they're not, their bodies aren't active. And I think I said, or maybe I just thought to myself, the real reason is probably because after they eat, they lie down to sleep, which is far worse, right? After you eat, you should get up and do walking meditation, of course. Walking meditation helps digest your food. The Buddha himself recommended it. Good idea. Walking is a great thing to do after you eat. Not lying down to sleep. So you get addicted like this, you're not going to get anywhere. But it is unfortunately a common problem with monks. They get into a routine of laziness. They eat and then they sleep. Don't do that. Oh, very hard to progress in the meditation that way. And number 5, some people, bhikkhus, or maybe even lay people, they live the holy life. They practice meditation and goodness of all kinds in order to go to heaven. Aspiring to some order of angels, thus, by this virtue or observance, or asceticism or holy life, I shall become a great god or a lesser god. Angel, maybe, is a better word. And as a result, this is a bad idea, because it's complacency. It's complacency in samsara, it's complacency in existence. It sets the whole wrong tone of the mind. It sends you out, right? Becoming an angel is just another concept. Becoming a god, even. Meditation is supposed to bring you in and keep you present. If you're focused on what you're going to get out of this, what's going to happen after you die. Not such a common problem in modern times, because everyone is skeptical about the potential for rebirth anyway, but nonetheless, any kind of future reward, even future rewards in this life. You think, I'll practice meditation like this and it'll make me, free me from this problem or free me from that problem. It's really the wrong way to go about it, because you're focused on the future. You're focused on a conceptual state that doesn't actually exist, right? Any state of freedom is only a momentary state. No, meditation has to keep you here and now. If you want release, if you want freedom, you really have to be focused on the present, not on what you're going to get out of it, but how you're living, how you're practicing. In this moment, is my mind pure? That's all you have to worry about. In this moment, is my mind clear? That's where your attention should be focused. That should be your goal, not, I will get this out of it, I will get that out of it, I will be like this. And then you open your eye and say, am I there yet? Right? Wondering if you've attained these positive states yet, and then you doubt, feel bad because you haven't, and then you start doubting. So we get back to the first part. These are the 5 shackles, all based on clinging. And he says, when you've severed these shackles and abandoned the wastelands of the mind, the bad stuff in the mind, whatever, then 5 good things come up, right? Or maybe, having done that, you're free to develop 5 good things. So these 5 good things are the 4 iddhipada that I've talked about before. Some of you maybe remember. The first one is chanda. You start to have sort of a sense of appreciation for the practice. You settle in and you become comfortable with it. When your mind is all tossed and turned, meditation doesn't seem very, very appealing. Once you get settled and you settle all these negative aspects of the mind, meditation becomes quite appealing and you really get keen on it. That's chanda. The second is virya. Once you have chanda, then you have effort. You're really able to put out effort because you have your mind is single-pointed, in the sense that you're not, should I do it, shouldn't I do it, right? You're not being pushed and pulled by the doubt or the greed. Oh, maybe I'll go and enjoy this or enjoy that. Once you give these things up, you're free to do what's right, and you're intent upon it, and you put out great effort because you're keen on it. Virya. The second is citta. Citta, you start to, and you have to start. I mean, this is also active. Citta means you focus on it. Because of the effort, you're able to focus your attention and see things more clearly. Citta. Keep what you do in mind. Keep focused on it. It takes energy, and then the focus comes. And the fourth is vimamsa. Vimamsa means you begin to analyze your practice in the sense of adjusting it. Right? Vimamsa is this fourth important quality. It's not enough to just be pushing and focusing and keen on it. You have to be smart as well, analytical in the sense of, what's wrong with my practice? What could I improve about my practice? And being methodical in implementing the changes. So those are the 4. The 5th one, I don't know what to do with it. The 5th one is called usolhi. I think it's the Thai word utsaha. Usolhi means, let's look it up. So the fourth, and then he says that in the fifth one, Eva Masayang Panchamo. Oh wait, no. Where am I? Oh no, here we are. Usoli Panara Sangha Samanagato. Yeah, it's not going to translate that. Usolhi. Usolhi. Exertion. Yeah, Usaha is the one I'm familiar with. Usolhi. Usaha is just effort, really. What would it be referring to? Because we've already got effort in there. Solha maybe refers to the practical aspect of repetition, perhaps, keeping up with something. So it's one thing to practice and to practice well, but the question is, are you keeping up with it? Are you really dedicated? Maybe it's dedication, when you're devoted and dedicated to it, then all these good qualities come to fruition. But anyway, those first four are very important. It's something the Buddha talks about often, and they're the roads to success. Keenness or interest in what you're doing, effort, focus, and discernment. These are the four ways to succeed in really anything, but most especially in mental fortitude. So, there you go. That's the Cetokhila Sutta. I do recommend reading it in full if you're interested in these Dhammas. But that's the Dhamma for tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a good night.
Okay. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So, with that, we just finished the Dhamma on the discourse of the wilderness, or the jungle, or the wasteland of the mind, as laid out by the Venerable Yuttadhammo Bhikkhus. And make sure you go and check out the monks, the Venerable Bhantes channel. There's plenty of good Dhamma talks there. And thank you so much for joining me here under the Bodhi tree. If you made it all the way through this sitting, I also kind of want to congratulate you in that. And let's just go up here again. Oh, now we're all up in the Bodhi tree. And going up here. There we go. Oops. Yeah, so yeah. Check out the links below, and yeah, may you be peaceful and happy until the next video. Thank you.